And joining us now with more on the latest developments in the region and the speculation of growing tensions between Washington and Jerusalem is former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you. Good afternoon.
So U.S. President Trump kicking off his trip in the Gulf states. Economic ties seem to be dominating the visit. But how much of this trip is going to focus on the big issues in the region, the Gaza war, the Iranian threat, and even the Abraham Accords?
I imagine it'll be part of any discussion, but from whatever I'm reading and what I'm hearing in Washington, this is really about deals. It's about President Trump's desire to get the Saudis to invest upwards of $1 trillion in the U.S. economy. I think it's a very hard bill for them to fund. That's much more than the Saudis earn every year through oil sales, but he's going to strive for it. The question is, what's going to be the quid pro quo? Is the quid pro quo going to be the provision of American nuclear power, civilian nuclear power to Saudi Arabia, and the decoupling of that provision of nuclear power from the normalization with Israel? Because in the past, those two issues, nuclear power for Saudi Arabia was sort of an incentive to Saudi Arabia to normalize relationship with Israel. And now, apparently, President Trump is going to pursue that venue without a connection to Israel. Conversely, the Palestinian issue could come up again. President Trump, in his previous administration's first term in office, had a two-state plan called the Deal of the Century. It was a two-state plan. I'm going to proceed on the assumption that it's still out there somewhere, certainly out there in his mind. And that could resume all, again, in connection to expanding the Abraham Accords and a U.S. and Israeli-Saudi peace deal.
Now, I want to get back to Qatar, Saudi Arabia in a moment, but we saw the release of Idan Alexander as a gesture to Trump. What do you make of this, and why isn't Trump demanding more of Qatar?
Well, that's a very good question. As a matter of fact, he's getting a plane from Qatar, at least he wants to, a $400 million jet from Qatar. And it was interesting, I must say, I'm following all the back and forth in the American press surrounding this plane, whether it's a legal or illegal gift to a public figure. But almost nobody's saying who's giving the gift. How can, in one breath, a big part of the American public complain about the money that Qataris give to American universities and the degree to which that influences what those universities teach and what ideas the students of those universities take out with them into American government and other areas of influence in the United States. And on the other hand, no one's raising the question about the origin of this jet, whether it comes from one of the world's largest state sponsors of terror, and practically the funder of October 7th. So to me, it's an issue. It is. The Qataris, though, right now, I think enjoy a very close relationship with Donald Trump. From Hamas's perspective, releasing Idan Alexander was a masterstroke. It puts the president in Hamas's debt. That sounds very strange, but now, they have made the gesture. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be further pressure on Israel to reach a deal that would include a prolonged ceasefire, withdrawal perhaps of Israeli troops to parts of Gaza, and the return of Palestinians to their homes. The big question is, does Donald Trump still adhere to this notion of transforming Gaza into a resort area? Remember the Riviera idea? Mm-hmm. In any case, nothing's going to happen until Israel concludes its battles or brings it to some type of conclusion, its battles against Hamas. Donald Trump wants to see peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. That I'm certain of. And he wants to perhaps be engaged in the rebuilding and renovation of Gaza. We can't do that as long as the IDF is fighting. And I think from America's perspective, it's hard for them to understand what's taking us so long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Ambassador Michael Oren, thank you so much for your insights today.
Bye.